The countdown to the Miami Hurricanes spring game continues. What do we need to see from this team on April 12th to let everybody know the program is still trending up?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to talk on this episode about, how important it is that the defense, I keep my fingers crossed, they keep clicking. But Mario Cristobal said after Thursday's practice, they're clicking. That was their best practice earlier this week. And what we need to see in that spring game. Now, we're bringing in my dude who has been a Cane lifer, our guy from the Postcast King, Jim Grieshaber, is with us. Of course, when Miami is in season, you'll hear him after every single Canes football game right here on the Locked On Network. And so, Gries, we're at T-minus 8 days until Miami's spring game, April 12th. What are you going to be looking for from this team?
Well, Alex, I'm going to be looking for a lot of things. I'm going to be looking for, because when you're coming off a year like they had last year with Cam Ward, and nobody saw it coming except, Cam Ward. And once he got there, the players, it just was this magical feeling and this carpet ride we had, right? And so it was the steady hand and leadership of a quarterback who had so much experience, so many big games, had put up a ton of points in a conference with no defense, right? And so you knew he'd come in, Cam Ward, and he'd have a pretty good year. But the spring game last year, you know what I mean? Like, nobody had any idea that any of this was coming. When we were going into and coming out of the spring game last year, I don't remember too many people saying, hey, it's going to be a magical year. And it did not end up being a magical year overall. We know this, right? It ended up being a magical ride for a while with Cam Ward bailing this team out over and over again. And Carson Beck could do that. But what I want to see this year at the spring game, Alex, is depth. I really believe the depth is going to be really important right now. And I think that you cannot underestimate that. And last year, and I know we're going to talk about the defense, but last year, the defense had so many question marks coming into and going out of the spring game. They should have been wearing Riddler costumes, right? And a big part of last year during the season was the health of the defensive line. They had so many injuries, and the depth was really a problem there. So when the University of Miami has been so great in the past, what's been the key? Now, the 2001 team, 2000 team, they were 2-3 deep at every position. That was crazy. But in the 80s, in the 90s, when we were winning, what was the key? Being able to bring in that second team, that third team, and not have much, if any, drop-off, right? Vince Wilfork didn't start as a freshman, and he was dominant, right? So they're just coming at you in waves on defense. And I think that, to me, is going to be the key. And not just on defense. A lot of new guys in the receiver core, a lot of guys stepping up in the receiver core. You always want that depth there to where you have 5-6 guys you can run out and not really miss a beat. Running back room, you need some depth there. So I think, to me, and the offensive line goes without saying, I think it's the depth. I think it's the overall quality, but then you go 1-2 deep at every position. And I don't think we had that at all last year, especially on defense.
I couldn't have said it any better. To me, that's the big, and obviously you want to see your starters flash in a spring game or in any situation. Now, like in the case of quarterback, I don't imagine Carson Beck is going to play in the spring game. So we'll only be watching backups. And I know that's another thing, Gries, that the fans are going to want to see, because even though it may not be QB1 out there, fans are going to want to see Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, and probably especially Luke Nickel, because we're always the most excited about the newest guy, right? Him being the true freshman. So the quarterback play is going to be interesting, because we'll have to know, unless the recovery is even farther ahead of schedule than I thought, we're not going to be seeing Beck in the spring game. So I know, Gries, for good or for bad, fans are going to overreact to the backup quarterback play. If you have a guy who makes a few great throws, people are going to try to crown him. If you have a guy who struggles, people are going to say, is he a bust? Does he belong here? So that's another thing I'm going to be anxious to check out.
Yeah, and we know Carson Beck's going to be the starter, right? But what if an injury happens? Yeah. What if anything happens, right?
Right.
And obviously, things happen all the time in college football where things don't go according to plan. Look at Ewers last year at Texas, and Arch Manning, pretty much they benched him in the bowl game. So when I think about what you expected coming into the season. And then Georgia, nobody knows it more than Carson Beck, the expectations that he's had in his career. And then he leaves for the NIL money. Let's be real. That's why he left. You know what I mean? He got the money, and he's got to live up to that money. It's a big roll of the dice. It's a big gamble. Right now, it's the way Miami has to do things. In the future, I would like to see someone come in and be here for years, but you never know, because if you don't play an Arch Manning right away, he might leave now. You know what I mean? And he might leave after 2 years of playing every down and every snap if things don't go his way, or he doesn't like the coach, or he's not getting enough money. But to master recruiting and to master bringing in transfers through the portal, I think that's been brilliant. And that's one thing that you're always looking at the new guys in the spring game too, because there's so many high-level newcomers. And then you see what they're doing in practice, Alex. But to quote the great Allen Iverson, we talking about practice.
Yeah, it's
Not
funny
a game.
because
It ain't a game, Alex.
yeah.
We're talking about practice.
Yeah, because this time of year on Locked On Canes, we talk a lot about what's going on in spring practice, and if I talk about a player who performs well, and there of course have been, I'll get comments like, "Who cares? Spring football." But then let's say I don't necessarily mention a certain player, and I say this all the time to our listeners, if I talk about who's doing well out there, if there's a name I don't bring up, that doesn't necessarily mean that player is doing badly. It's just, there's a lot of things running through my head. Certain guys, there's like 100 guys out there on the roster. I don't get to notice every single person out there. So you get overreactions either way. If I talk somebody up, it's like, you're talking this guy up too much. Or if I don't mention a name, does that mean he's terrible? Is he going to transfer? So it comes with the territory, and I enjoy it. I love breaking down practices, but I do want to take a deeper dive with Gries on the defense when we come back. And you brought it up. They have to be better this year. That is non-negotiable, right? Because you just had arguably the top quarterback in the country. I mean, not arguably, he's about to be the number 1 overall draft pick. You just had the top quarterback in the country this past year, number 1 offense in the country, and you still couldn't win a conference championship or a national championship because of the other side of the football. So you want to keep it locked right here. We got the Postcast King with us on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day, you're watching your kids take their first steps, and then before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives me that peace of mind. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. We are also brought to you by Prize Picks. And guys, this week, with all the NBA action and college basketball coming up this weekend, there is so much action to get with Prize Picks, and baseball is in full swing now. There's no better way to get in on that than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you win up to 1,000 times your cash, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. Guys, setting up a lineup takes less than 60 seconds. It's so easy, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. This week, we're going with Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run, Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy to make these selections. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you're checking out the awesome postcasts from our guy Gries. I know there's obviously a lot of Miami Heat fans who watch this channel and listen to this channel, and Gries is the guy who keeps you updated after their games. We had some fun there. I know they lost to Memphis, but the 6-game winning streak was a nice bounce back after all of those troubles, so things are getting a little bit better there too.
Yeah, not too bad. And then Ja Morant hits the game winner over Khalil Ware and pulls out the machine gun again. Ja Morant and his guns.
And
Can't get
gets
enough
fined $75,000 today.
He should. He should get fined more. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Heat was a great winning streak for the Heat. Tyler Hero, I just have to say, for those of you who are Heat fans, Tyler Hero is balling this year, man. He might not be an A1 player. He might not be the guy you need on a championship team if he's your best player. Man, but a number 2 on a championship level team, and I'm not saying Bam's a number 1, but I just want to say what a great year Tyler Hero's had, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Hopefully Miami's the Hurricanes defense can step up the way that Tyler Hero has.
Yeah.
So Thursday was a big day in practice for the defense, and it's like it's positive to hear this because we know everything's changed, right? I mean, some of the same players are back, but there's a lot of new players in there, almost all new coaches. Jason Taylor coaching the defensive ends, the only holdover from the defensive staff, new defensive coordinator, Corey Hetherman. So there's been a lot of installing going on. And Mario Cristobal said after Thursday's practice, I'd say today was really big overall for the defense. So much of it came together today, he said. Whether you install something new, you see flashes, then you have head-scratching moments, then you see some forms of progress, which I guess is the stage they're in now. He said, you see guys communicating really, really well, and we have moved fast. He said, today, we looked like a day where we played to our ability. Guys weren't stuck and paralyzed with confusion. They were able to just cut it loose. And Gries, we've been watching Miami football for decades. Miami's best defenses are the ones that can cut it loose.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and wreak havoc and mayhem and improv on the field and make plays like an Ed Reed or a Sean Taylor. I mean, you're talking about some of the greatest who have ever played the game right there, right? And so that's the benchmark. That's the standard. These kids, it's not fair, Alex, because the University of Miami is most certainly not. And I'm going to get heat for saying this. University of Miami is not the University of Miami of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. It's not even close. It wasn't even close. Now we think it is again because of Cam Ward, and he's going to be the number 1 pick. And not just Cam Ward. I mean, that receiving core and the offense last year was so good, so great. And at times the defense held on and held up. Not many, but I don't know if I can remember a worse defense at the University of Miami. I really don't. I mean, that was one of the better offenses we've had, statistically probably the best. At quarterback, maybe the best quarterback performance we've ever seen from Cam Ward. And now that the game's different now, it's like a cartoon. You can't touch receivers. You can't hit the quarterback. A lot different. If you put Jim Kelly in there now, he might have a lot different numbers, but and Kozar certainly. But when I think about what this team is coming into this season, Carson Beck's going to put up numbers, man. Carson Beck's probably going to be a top 5 pick, right? He's Carson Beck. He's already cemented that. If he has a good year, he'll be there. To me, it's still the defense, and I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm hearing. We know Corey Hetherman at Minnesota, 16 points a game, had some really good offenses in that conference, right? Had some great offenses in that conference, but a lot of those games that they're playing at Minnesota, they're not in those games. Those games are not important to them. They're not having any chance to win a conference championship. They're not the biggest game on those team schedules. It's a lot different when you're at the University of Miami, especially coming off a year like last year. But what I really like about what I'm seeing about the defense, Alex, is because of guys like you. Thank God for guys like you and, the guys who are there every day. But with something like Locked On Canes, we get the 411, and you work hard, man. You're one of the best in the biz, and we know everything that's going on that we possibly could know. But that being said, we don't, and you don't really know that much, right? Because like I said, we talk about practice, but even in the spring game, you're not going to know that much. But one thing I would love to take away from this spring game is when Ruben Bain talks about the defense being simplified. And, I like it too when they're talking about being able to defensive linemen, I'm talking about here, being able just to pin their ears back and get upfield quicker and get upfield more. They're in the backfield. They're making plays. The scheme that the defense that Hetherman's running, the scheme seems to be a lot more appealing to the players. Now, when that's the case with 19, 20, 21-year-olds, you get a lot more buy-in, right? And everybody gets that little extra bit of confidence, that little extra swag. And to me, that was nowhere to be found last year. So I want to see this defense stand up in this spring and in the spring game and in the fall camp. I want to see chips the size of Dade County on their shoulders. I want to see chips there, Alex, on both shoulders. I want to see a pissed-off defense going out there this year looking to take back what they can and what they believe they should be at the University of Miami. I think that's a mindset. I don't think that comes with talent whatsoever. And I think it was sorely missing from that defense a year ago. They had no confidence by the end of the year. Zero.
By the way, the most interesting quote about how much they like Hetherman's defense, I did mention it on our morning episode today, but I thought Akeem Mesidor summed it up bizarrely great, where he's like, playing in this defense every day, it's like waking up to your mom's freshly made French toast every morning. It's like how he described playing in Corey Hetherman's defense. And, I'll say, like, to me, Gries, the biggest differences that, like, I notice in practice, and you're right to set the context, right? That I know far from everything about what's going on. And that I can emphasize that by, like, sometimes the media viewing windows are as short as 20 minutes. Sometimes they're 40 minutes. So we're only really scratching the surface with what we actually get to see. But to me, the most noticeable just transformation is the defensive backfield looks a lot bigger and it looks a lot more physical. And deeper. You talked about depth earlier. I give credit to Mario Cristobal for knowing that, hey, like that unit, especially, the defense. I mean, we could also talk about how not enough pressure to take pressure away from the defensive back. So I get it, but the defensive backfield was not good enough and not deep enough last year. Cristobal goes out and grabs 5 guys in the transfer portal. Xavier Lucas being the one who is standing out most. Like he looks like a future NFL player. I mean, he's over 200 pounds, 205, 210 pounds, quick physical cover corner. So that's like the biggest thing to me. And I've seen some good signs from the defensive line as well. Like the new guy, David Blay from Louisiana Tech, I know is impressing some folks, but just, how, and, there's some good linebackers as well. But just how different the defensive backfield looks to me is, I think that's going to be one of those areas that Miami could turn from a weakness into a strength just with the guys they brought in.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And then also that gives a little extra competition to every position that they bring guys in. And so the guy they're coming in to replace, if he's still there, because some people left, then that person's got to step it up. And one of the things I love seeing, Alex, and we don't know any of this, and you're right, those windows that you get, and then they carefully choose what you guys get to see when you get let in. And there's nothing that you or anybody else could do about that. But what I will say, and you have a keen eye over the years, and you see players making progress, right? And to me, that's what it's all about in the spring. Getting a little bit better, getting a little bit more confidence, and fanning those flames and feeding that fire even more, individually, collectively, to get up earlier, to hit that weight room more, to run more sprints, to come together as a team through the players like Ed Reed used to do. And I love how Cam Ward had the workouts, and I think it was Restrepo up in Palm Beach working out with another quarterback, and I forget who it was last year. He's up there. It was an NFL quarterback. He's up there working out. And he's working out with Restrepo, and Cam Ward's down in Coral Gables saying, hey, he goes, if I ain't throwing you the ball in the offseason, I ain't throwing you the ball during the season. And that sort of set the tone, so when you have that kind of leadership and that kind of work ethic, but then the other part of that is the younger players who develop that confidence in the spring, then they hit fall camp like a storm. Like Warren Sapp that one year out of nowhere just took that step and got so much better to being the best defensive lineman in college football almost out of nowhere. Who's going to make that leap this year?
I'm going to say Justin Scott is going to be the guy to make that leap this year. He's heading into his second year at defensive tackle. He got some playing time. I want to say he played enough to burn his red shirt last year, but don't quote me on that. So I think he's officially a sophomore, but his former 5-star recruit. I think Justin Scott, to me, is ready to take that big step. So I think that might be the next guy who, and a defensive tackle. I hope we can bring that back, because that used to be a big point of success for Miami in better days.
More than quarterback I think. Way more. That's been the number one position. Mm-hmm. And it's 4 positions to 1 too, defensive line, when you're in a 4-3.
Yeah.
3 or 4 positions to 1 if you're in a 3. But so that's a little unfair comparison. But the defensive line at the University of Miami has been great. And we talked about it earlier, the depth. You need those guys to be able to go 2-3 deep and not miss anything.
Yeah, well, no doubt. Well, I appreciate your time, Gries. And by the way, Gries is he's living it up in Las Vegas right now, so I'm living vicariously through you. I know you're on a trip over there to Sin City, so send us some pictures and keep us updated on how that's going. And make sure you check him out on the Locked On Postcast. You can see him doing a postcast for Miami Heat games, San Diego Padres games, and of course, Miami football once we finally get back around to that. And follow him on X at @JimGries_. Follow us at Locked On Canes, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.